About 3:30 this afternoon, we received a 911 call in reference to possible shots fired in the alleyway of the 5100 block of Kingston. Two victims, females. I do not know the age, do not know their names, and I do not know their current condition. The only suspect information we have at this time is a white male suspect, bushy brown hair, driving possibly a black SUV truck type vehicle. Right now,
Kody Lott was born January 7th, 1996, and is from the Wichita Falls area, Texas. Kody's father says that he was a bright and kind young man who would play with other children confidently and always received good grades and praise for his schoolwork. Around the mid-2000s, people in Kody's life noticed that his behavior had begun to change, as he would start to exhibit aggressive and violent outbursts alongside extremely antisocial behavior. Kody's father believes that this is caused by the divorce that was happening between he and Kody's mother, and says that this was a very difficult time for the young child. As the years passed, Kody's behavior continued to get worse, and he found himself entering the world of illicit drugs at the age of 13. From this point on, it is noted that his mental health would drastically deteriorate. In 2010, he started a relationship with another high school classmate whose name is Haley Clayton. The relationship would last 2 years, and over the course of it, Haley endured multiple instances of physical and emotional abuse. She would claim that amongst other things, he wrapped a seatbelt around her neck and strangled her. He had pushed her down a staircase, and he would also slam her head against the dashboard of his car. In 2012, Haley moved to Colorado to live with her mother, and Kody moved with her. Within a month, he was engaging in such abusive behavior in front of Haley's family that her mother bought him a bus ticket, sent him back to Texas, and assisted her daughter to break up with him. Haley proceeded to stay with her mother for another year out of fear that he might kill her if she were to return to Texas. Despite these fears, Haley did eventually return to Texas in 2013 and would start a relationship with another man whom she had a child with. Upon learning about this relationship, Kody began to harass and threaten her, her partner, and her child's lives. He said that he was going to make them wreck their vehicles, and if they survived the crash, he would torture them all before killing them, making sure to torture the child first so the parents could watch. He harassed them for 3 years, and even on the day of the September 2nd, 2016 shooting, the incident that this video is going to focus on, Kody had sent threatening messages to Haley less than an hour before the first bullets were fired. The harassment of Haley and her family was just one part of his troubling and criminal behavior. His drug use would continue to snowball as he experimented with heroin, methamphetamines, MDMA, GHB, and many more. Throughout 2014, he was arrested 4 times for drug possession, and in 2015 was involved in a police standoff hostage situation. Wednesday, June 10th at 10 a.m., law enforcement received a call from his grandmother saying that she was being held against her will in the house, and that Kody had a gun and was threatening to shoot people. When police arrived, a negotiator was able to talk Kody out of the house peacefully, and no shots were fired. No charges were placed against him for this incident either. He was sent to a mental health facility in Houston and was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Upon being released from the facility, Kody would refuse to take the psychiatric medication prescribed to him, and instead would double down on self-medication. Through this, he would spend a significant amount of time inside his mother and stepfather's apartment, located near the McNeil Middle High School. During 2015, in one of the days that he spent at this apartment, looking out the window, he noticed 12-year-old Lauren Landavazo. After school, she would walk home with her friends and sometimes her boyfriend, and for a year, Kody would watch her. He became obsessed with her, and along with this obsession, a deep rage had begun to boil inside of him. After some planning, Kody found an opportunity to take action on this rage. On the day of September 2nd, 2016, his mother and stepfather are out of town, but Kody still has access to their residence. He enters the property, takes his stepfather's semi-automatic rifle, and drives towards an alleyway where all of the children walk home from school. Lauren was walking home with her friend Michaela Smith and a few others, and she was going to meet her boyfriend nearby. As Lauren, Michaela, and their friends were walking through the alleyway, there was another small group of 3 children who were a few feet behind them.
What school did you attend in 2016?
McNeil Middle School.
And what grade were you in 2016?
7th.
And how old were you in September of 2016?
12.
And what are some of the things you like to do, Hope?
I draw, I'm in the marching band, and I play tennis.
And I know you like to be on your cell phone, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. You like to read?
I love reading.
Okay. As a matter of fact, when you came to my office, you had a book with you, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What were you reading at the time?
Monday's Not Coming.
As these three friends walked down the alley with Lauren and Michaela in front of them, they noticed a vehicle pull up right in front of them all, with the driver's side window facing them.
What kind of vehicle did you see? What color? Do you know what make?
Champagne.
Champagne. Was it a sedan? Was it a truck or an SUV?
SUV. Like a GMC.
GMC. What drew your attention to that vehicle?
It's stopping.
So it's not common for a vehicle to stop there?
No.
And then after you saw it stop, what did you see or hear next?
We just stood there because we thought Lauren and Michaela were getting picked up. We heard shots.
Were they fast shots,
Yes.
pause shots, or how were they?
They were fast shots.
Do you remember how many?
No. At first, I thought it was a paintball gun or a BB gun because teenagers like to play pranks and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't think any of it until Lauren fell and Michaela ran. And I think she screamed once as she ran.
Michaela?
Yes.
Did you hear anything from Lauren?
Mm-mm.
Did Lauren move after she went down?
I wasn't focusing on it.
Okay. So what were you focusing on?
Trying to get my friends in my backyard.
All I remember is going into Hope's backyard and just waiting till we heard the sound stop. And even after it did, we still waited a couple seconds.
After the shots stopped, what did you do?
Well, we went back outside into the alley to see what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Lauren on the ground where she had fallen. And we also saw Michaela. Looked like she was out with her phone trying to dial a number. We were asking what was going on, and we asked if it was like a real gun or what.
And what she said?
She said yes, because she was on the she was holding her hand over where she had been shot. And so at that point, then I kind of got over the shock of it and was more frightened at that point. And so I pulled out my phone and I called my dad. Well, I told him that there were shots that were fired, and I was asking him to see if he could come and get us.
And did he come get you?
Yes.
And what's the first thing you did when you saw your dad?
Well, I just ran to him.
Did you give him a hug?
Yeah, and I hugged him, and then we went to his car.
And Elijah, were you upset that day? Do you ever think about that day?
Sometimes.
From the driver's window of his vehicle, Kody had opened fire on the children, his main target being Lauren, but the secondary target was Michaela, as Kody would later go on to say, "If I had more bullets, I would have been able to kill her as well." Lauren was struck 15 times, twice of which being in the head, and was fatally wounded. Michaela was hit once in her chest, and not only survived her injury, but took to the stand during this trial to face the shooter in court as she testifies to what she remembers of that day.
As a reminder to the media, there will be no video recorded during this next witness's testimony.
Please state your name.
Michaela Smith,
And what's your date of birth?
December 20th, 2002.
And how old are you now?
15.
And what activities do you like to do?
I like to read and listen to music.
September 2016, what grade were you in?
I was in 8th grade.
How did you normally get home that year?
I would walk home.
Were you ever afraid to walk home?
No, ma'am.
So I'm going to direct your attention to September 2nd of 2016, when you were in 8th grade. And who did you usually walk home with?
I walked home with my friends Lauren, Kyra, and Renelle, and Alani.
How long had you known Lauren?
I've known her since 3rd or 4th grade.
How would you describe Lauren?
Very kind and open-minded.
Okay.
She was very positive about everything.
At this point of her testimony, Michaela recalls a series of events that led to her and Lauren walking down the alleyway, and she remembers the strange vehicle stopping in front of them.
I remember he stopped and we all kind of just like stopped walking,
Mm-hmm.
and I was paying attention to him, and I was looking at him, and like he looked up at me, and we made eye contact for a few seconds, and then he turned, and like he got his weapon, and he pointed it at me. As I was moving, I got hit, and like I thought I got hit in the middle of my chest, and I couldn't breathe. And Kyra was asking if I was okay, and like I couldn't speak, and I was waving at her to go, and kind of like motioning for everybody else to move. And we all turned to leave, and I was hearing shots firing over and over. And like after everything, all this like no, there were no more shots, and like we stopped running, and we all turned, and like the car was gone. And I was kind of making head counts, and like I didn't see Lauren anywhere. So I was walking over to the dumpster, and I had to sit down because I couldn't keep standing. As I was...
Yes or no?
As I was sitting near the dumpsters, I still didn't know if it was real or not, and like I was feeling my blood run down my chest, down my stomach, and Kyra was asking if it was a joke, like she wanted it to be, because she was freaking out, and that's when I was really starting to look for my friend, and like I turned, and all I saw was her legs, and she was laying on the floor, and I was screaming her name, and she wasn't responding, and that's when a man jumped over the fence, and he came over to me, and he was telling me to sit down, and
I just saw a young girl laying there, and I ran to her. It's hard.
I know. Let's take your time.
I noticed that in what we refer to in the Army, when I was at the infantry, as the death glaze, or the death stare. Just to stare off into nothing. It was just, when a person's deceased, and there's no movement, and their eyes stop, and there's no movement, they just kind of stick where they're at. That's what we call the glaze, where they don't move anymore. They're just stopped.
Is that what you saw?
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's what I saw with Lauren. The way she was laying, if I remember correctly, it was her wrist. It was in a pinched position where anybody was conscious or was alive, they wouldn't want there to be in that kind of position. And then another lady came up, I don't remember who she was. She was there, and then I heard a child off my left side come down from the alley saying another child was shot. And I looked up, and that's when I saw Michaela. She was standing there, and I ran to her. That's when I kind of came to a little bit more and realized that all hell's breaking loose. There was just people everywhere, kids crying.
There were so many people, and everyone was staring, and I just felt bad that everyone was just staring at her laying there. I didn't want that for her, so I got a blanket and tried to cover her up a little bit as best I could.
Her eyes were still open, and there was a large wound to her head. She still had her binder wrapped in her arms. I asked her if she was okay.
Did you think she was going to respond? Why is that, Sarah?
I believed her already had passed at that point.
I need an ambulance to 5143 Kingston. There is a young lady that is laying on the ground and bleeding. She does not appear to be conscious or have any that I was told that there were gunshots fired at her.
It was very chaotic.
Chaotic? In what way?
A lot of people were screaming and yelling, running around, a lot of people on their phones, people trying to figure out what's going on, especially since it was in a neighborhood right across from a school next to a major apartment complex. There's just everyone was out just either looking or running through, or there's something going on, checking to see if it was their child being involved.
We've heard some testimony. There were people crying out there. Did you see people crying?
Yes.
Old people, young people?
Yes.
I think you told me something earlier today about that scream. What did you say?
It just sends chills down your spine. It just...
Every time you hear it?
Every time. It's a parent grieving for the loss of the child. I'm a parent, and you just feel for them.
As soon as EMTs arrive on the scene, they immediately turn their attention to Michaela, who is still up and walking around with the bullet in her chest. She's placed on a gurney, and both girls are rushed to the hospital.
They put me in a room where they were trying to see where like my wounds were, and then they called my brother to Kaylin, and like he finally showed up, and at first he couldn't even come into the room. He couldn't even look at me because he was so.
You need to take a break?
Yeah.
Okay. Take a minute. Okay.
He couldn't even look at me because of like the state that I was in. But he came into the room and he was holding my hand. And
do you ever think about that day?
Yes, ma'am.
How often do you think about that day?
No. Sometimes it'll come up when I'm laying on my stomach, or I'm doing normal activity, because since the bullet is so close to where my bra wire is, like it'll scrape it or whatever, it'll hurt. I have to adjust it, or I have to adjust how I'm laying down. Memories kind of come up.
The bullet inside Michaela was in a difficult position to remove, and surgeons opted to leave it in, as removing it would be too risky. Lauren is pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital, as the gunshot wounds had hit too many vital organs, including her brain, spine, and liver. Immediately after Kody finished his assault, he fled the scene. Multiple reports were given to the police from multiple witnesses that outlined what the shooter looked like and what vehicle he was driving. Despite the almost immediate lockdown of the area, Kody evades law enforcement and disposes of the weapon in a nearby ditch. 2 days later, on September 4th, a memorial service is being held for Lauren in the alleyway, where a number of people from the community are gathering to pay their respects. Kody has begun to worry, as he believes when his stepfather returns home, he'll notice the missing weapon and suspect that he may be the shooter. So Kody drives back to the ditch and collects the weapon. Upon retrieving it, he wraps it in a towel and places it in the backseat of his car. He then decides to drive by the memorial service that is being held for the young girl whom he murdered. At this very same time, Joanne Ramirez and her partner, who live over 30 minutes drive away from the memorial, decide to attend the service to pay their respects. They get lost along the way and almost turn back a few times. Finally, after making it to the service, they realize that it is overflowing with people. The two decide to sit in their car where they've parked and wait for the crowds to dissipate a little before they get out and speak with the grieving family. By this point, it's important to note that the description of the shooter and his vehicle is now widespread amongst the community, being shared all over social media and talked about constantly on news and radio programs. Whilst Joanne and her partner are sitting in their car waiting, they notice a vehicle drive by them.
Did the vehicle with the white male driving go by the memorial?
Yes, ma'am.
We saw that it was a young white male that they were possibly looking for. We kind of just followed him. He turned into, Officer and Daddy turned into right into the apartment complex. And of course we followed. He pulled in and we just parked and watched. He went to the back passenger door.
Okay.
He opened the door and he proceeded to get what looked like a rifle or something. He tucked it up under his arm, like he put the butt of the gun underneath with the blanket, something to wrap it up, and he took it towards the apartment complex. I grabbed a pen that was in Faustino's truck and just scribbled it on the palm of my hand so that I could, while we were calling, let the police know the license plate number.
After Joanne contacts 911 and gives them the license plate details, every officer on duty is sent a message to be on the lookout for the vehicle. Kody, unaware that law enforcement is closing in on him, puts the rifle back into his parents' apartment where he found it, and casually drives away to purchase weed from someone who lives nearby. Within 20 minutes, Officer Gordon finds himself behind the vehicle that Kody is driving.
I confirmed the tag with dispatch, and it was the correct tag. So after going another block, Cypress and Southwest, that's when I activated my emergency allowance. He had both hands on top of the part of the steering wheel, and he had a grasp hard enough that the right forearm was actually shaking.
Appeared to be somewhat tense. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Kody's vehicle is searched and brass knuckles are found. As this is an illegal weapon, Kody is placed under arrest and taken to the station. As he is put in the back of the police car, he talks to himself under his breath. A forensic audio expert worked on the recording so that his words could be heard for the courtroom. Upon arriving at the station, Detective Alan Killingsworth takes Kody into an interrogation room, reads him his rights, and Kody agrees to talk. Initially, he is very evasive about any involvement he could have had with the shooting, and when the detective starts to box him into a corner, Kody decides to change the subject and speak about his traumatic childhood. He explains to the detective that his father is a Satanist and would sexually abuse him when he was very young, which led him to his early drug use. The detective expertly acknowledges these statements, but very quickly shifts the conversation back to the shooting. He reveals that a search of Kody's vehicle uncovered a spent shell that matches the shells that were recovered from the crime scene. Kody's answer to this is that he has no idea how to fire a weapon and blames his stepbrother, saying that he likely has something to do with it if anyone does. This goes on for about 30 minutes and Kody eventually cracks, confessing to what he had done.
I'd seen that girl walk in multiple times with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend was just a little punk-looking kid that wasn't no man. So it kind of just sparked a jealousy in me, man, and I felt that was the way I was going to handle it. Well, the day before, I got all dressed up, and I was going to just go approach the girl, and I thought, every girl I try to be respectful to and be nice to, man, they say, Albert Einstein says, crazy, the definition of crazy is just repeating the same thing. So it's like, it's an obvious thing that, I guess, just, me being, looking how I do or whatever, me being nice is something that wasn't going to get me nowhere. I had to try something else, too, because it's like, it's just, all these girls were just ignoring me and disrespecting me, and all I ever wanted was an opportunity to be respectful and treat a girl right, because I knew this girl was going to end up getting raped here in a couple of years, and there's all kinds of evil going on there. So in my mind, I saved her from the evil of this world, and also was kind of a sacrifice to the devil, because I've been talking to the devil a lot, and he's the one that told me to do that, because I was sitting there with the gun, and I was watching out the window, man, waiting for them she'd been walking by herself every day. So Lauren was the only target in the ordeal. And I saw her walk by with her friends, and they, I'll tell you right now, when I saw her walking the black friends, I said, oh, hell no, we're not going to go down this path. I felt something charge me up, and I jumped in my car, and I just met them at that end of the alley, man, and I unloaded on them. You see, my birth date is 1796, and if you flip that around, like the 6 and the 9, the 6 represents up the sun, people call up the sun, It's red, it's represented with the color red. The 9, the color blue. You put those together, that's purple. I've been burning purple incense in my house and talking to the devil and hexagrams and pentagrams and all kinds of esoteric symbols. So, burning those purple, when they covered the news that her favorite color was purple, I knew that it was something that was meant to be. Like, it was not something that was my sign right there when she said, because I think of myself as the 8, because when I went down to Houston stuff, all the satanic guys, they were talking to me like I was the Antichrist, and like I was telepathic. I had all this stuff that like my bloodline just matched in with these guys that I only looked up Charles Manson and the True Satanist, and I got blown, and I had to go into the woods in Houston for 4 days. There was guys out there changing into wolves. They had trailers in there. Like, I was exposed to some pretty serious shit, man. So that is what, I mean, I didn't know anything about it. And then everything got put together about Charles Manson's scapegoat. Blood sacrifice. That was a sacrifice, like me sacrificing, it sounds twisted. Like, instead of those people sacrificed a person for their benefit, like I was kind of sacrificing myself for her benefit in my mind. Like, there was a band called Bullet for My Valentine. Like, that was the person who had raped me, man. It wasn't Lauren, it was the boyfriend. He had his fucking hair growing. I don't know how to like he had his hair just not giving a shit, and he just looked like some bum off the street. And I said, you know what? Like, I've been lost a good girl to some bum piece of shit. I'm not gonna do it, man. When I pulled out my heart, man, like I had a taco. I had one shit together, man. Yeah. I've waited long enough, is what I said in my mind. You know, like, I've been patient. I'm pissed at God. You know, I was. Now, start off, you know, if that's what we were coming under, hey, it gets to have a girl like that, and we really are in hell. That's what I said to myself, because I really suffer, man. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's like, I've had to really suffer with this whole ordeal about the females and shit. It's absolutely from God, I feel like. You know, it's absolutely God, because there's still people who they end up, by the time they're my age, they know getting some girls who don't mean nothing.
But you had a girlfriend before, because you went up with her to Colorado.
Yeah, but then, like, she really fucked me over. Like, the whole time she was, like, dating another dude when I was there. And when she even gangbanged at a party, I mean, she wasn't just, I wanted a girl like this girl I killed that was worth the shit. That's why I said, God, you sent me all these pieces of shit. Here's a gift to you, you know? Here's how I would have done you, is what I was trying to tell God. This is who I would have sent you. Look how generous I am, man. I mean, you got to send me all these pieces of shit. Why not give me what I want? That's all I want. I've had everything, man. I've had a brand new truck, had every drug you can think of. But right now, man, like, I can't even explain to you. Like, I'm going to a job, but I still so happy, I'm so happy. I can't explain why. I didn't feel happy until I got in here and confessed to them.
Must have made other people weight off your shoulders, I would guess.
Well, yeah, because I just want people to know what happened. Well, again, I want to know what happened. I want the story to be told. That's why I wanted the story to be told, my story, because that's all I had.
Many times through his interview, Kody would express his attraction towards Lauren, which I find highly disturbing for a multitude of reasons, one of them being her age. After his arrest, videos of children engaging in sexual activity were found on his phone. For him to express his attraction towards this girl who was 12 when he first saw her is highly troubling. The rambling stream of consciousness you just heard in the excerpt I pulled goes on for an incredible amount of time. And on top of this, when he was later evaluated by the defense expert psychiatrist, Kody would continue to divulge another onslaught of seemingly insane reasonings and thoughts surrounding the murder. Here are some more examples that I will try to summarize. He believed that Lauren was an angel and that she couldn't die. By shooting her and sending her to another dimension, he believed that he was sacrificing himself and his freedom for the betterment of the world. He held a belief that there was a cosmic battle between good and evil, and that he was getting God involved, but still maintained that he was working for the devil. He tried to get God or Jesus to come to Earth to intervene to stop the abuse of people going on all across the world. He was upset that it was being called a senseless act of random violence by the media. He claims that it was a sophisticated assassination with a lot of planning. He was thinking about this for over a year, and that he did it for the thrill of it. He believed that the devil would protect him and he wouldn't get caught. It was also a test to see if Jesus would protect an innocent person. He believed that he was going to be rewarded for the sacrifice with fame and drugs, and that he would put this incident in his skeleton closet, never mentioning it to anyone, and no one would ever know that they're around a killer. He said he killed her to prove his manhood and to show her that he is a man. He said he believed that murder was the only thing one can get away with, as his stepfather drowned many women in bleach and never got caught. He said he became evil to fight evil, and that he wanted to see what it felt like to see someone else have someone taken away from them. Another reason he mentioned for the killing was that it was a solution to stop himself from asking his mother for more drug money. He said that he killed her to show people how he felt on the inside, and now other people can feel it as well. He said that he wanted to get the birds chirping, like how satanic killers that he idolized did, and was happy that he was going to be on TV. Once again, there really seems to be no end to what Kody wanted to say regarding this murder, and what I've just read to you is heavily summarized, with a lot of it being left out. I felt as though these examples would give you a good understanding of what was being said by him overall. Kody's defense would present a case of not guilty by reason of insanity, and they called Dr. Brian Falls to the stand as an expert witness to testify about his psychiatric evaluation of the killer. The defense for Kody takes everything that he had said regarding the murder and paints the picture that Kody was not operating in reality. Because of this, even though he had some understanding of right and wrong, they argue that his delusional state is enough to warrant the blame not resting on his shoulders for the attack. In the attorney's own words, if he didn't think that Lauren was actually going to die, and that she would be protected or would ascend to another dimension, then he can't truly grasp the weight of what death means. Upon the prosecutor's cross-examination of this expert witness, the exchange would become rather heated between the two as she attempts to expose holes and problems with his evaluation.
And then did he also tell you during your most recent interview that he, Kody Lott, was hoping to get not guilty by reason of insanity?
Yes.
And those were his words?
Yes, but when I talked to him previously...
No, sir, just yes or no, okay?
Well, when I talked to him previously...
The question was, were those his words? Yes or no?
Yes.
If I didn't know what I was doing, I would assume I would get the weapon and then just go outdoors and shoot everybody up.
Yes,
I wouldn't take the time to put it on safety before I get in a vehicle and drive down the street to shoot somebody.
You're speaking maybe more of the nature and quality of the act, not the wrongfulness of the act. He had psychotic beliefs that undermined his ability to understand the wrongfulness of the act.
One at a time, please.
Okay, when I ask you a question, you have to answer it. You can't keep going on. I've let you do that for a little bit. But when I ask you a question, it's yes or no. Please answer yes or no. Okay. If he's in a room in an apartment by himself and he puts the safety on, it's only so that he doesn't accidentally discharge and hurt himself, correct? There's no one else around.
It's so that it doesn't accidentally discharge.
Yes or no? You put a safety on so that it's safe that you don't harm anyone else, correct?
You don't want the firearm to discharge?
No, I'm going to object to requiring yes or no. He's allowed to explain his answer. On that question.
Yeah, it's my understanding that safety, I mean, I'm not a firearms expert, but it's my understanding that safety is used so that the weapon doesn't accidentally discharge. And if a bullet goes off, it could hit someone, including yourself.
And if you're in an apartment by yourself, the only one you could hurt is yourself, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's it.
The clash between these two lasts for some time, with the prosecutor coming from the angle that Kody exhibited an abundance of behavior that proved he was not insane. Behavior such as planning the murder, hiding his actions and involvement, and making statements that showed he understood he had taken a life. The doctor would continue to stand his ground by arguing that it is the mechanisms behind these seemingly aware and sane actions that were shrouded in insanity. Before the trial took place, when it became apparent that Kody was going to be using an insanity defense, the prosecution brought in a psychologist who performed his own evaluation. Dr. Randall testifies that although Kody did suffer from severe mental disorders, he was fully aware of the wrongfulness of his actions, and the insanity defense is not one that should be able to be used for this case.
I had to be more focused on facts, information in the records, information about what he did, than necessarily what he told me, because he was likely telling me things that were exaggerations of the problems that I believed that he had. But it made it more difficult for me to do the diagnostic work here.
So he was basically hoping that he could fool you?
Well, I would say at least influencing what I might have to say.
But it did not.
Not in the direction that I believe he probably would have liked for it to go.
That's what it is.
This brings us pretty close to near the end of this phase of the trial, and it wraps up with some scathing closing statements from the prosecutors.
And now this man who loves to paraphrase the Bible, couldn't quote it to anybody, he said, I love the Bible. Proverbs 26 and 11. Just as a dog returns to his vomit, a fool returns to his folly. And we know on Sunday, September 4th, this dog returned to his vomit, drove right by.
What's the first thing that you do when you get into trouble or you're on hard times? I know what I do. You pray. You pray to God, you pray to Jesus to help you. To help you out of this mess, out of this problem, out of this mistake, whatever you've done, you pray to Jesus. And that supposed satanical, delusional person over there, first thing he did was pray to Jesus. Not the devil, not the occult, not 6 + 9 = 8, not red plus blue equals purple. He prayed to Jesus.
Count 1, we the jury find the defendant Kody Lott guilty of the offense of murder as alleged in the indictment. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Deadly weapon verdict, count 1. Having found the defendant guilty of murder as charged in the indictment, we the jury further find that a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, was used or exhibited.
Kody is found guilty on all charges, and so begins the penalty phase. Although I feel I don't need to show excerpts from this, as it plays out almost identically to what we just witnessed, with both teams pushing their sides of the arguments that I've already covered. At the end of this phase, the jury sentences Kody to life in prison plus 20 years for the murder of Lauren and the aggravated assault using a deadly weapon against Michaela. Usually I end these videos with my own personal summary, my thoughts on the trial and incident overall, but I don't really want to end that way today, and I'll explain why. As it so often happens, I still am formulating my opinion on what I think of Kody. Insane or not, I find it difficult to say. I agree with the state's psychologist that Kody most definitely does suffer from schizoaffective disorder, something that alters his view of the world and reality. But within that, I believe he made conscious decisions that he knew were wrong, that he knew would cause harm, and he chose to cause this harm for reasons that were utterly disgusting and selfish. He's a broken human. Who knows if his father abused him or not, or whatever else happened in his life that could have led him to make the decisions that he made. Whatever it is, there's no excuse for what he did in my mind. If he is in fact insane beyond the point of recognizing what his actions were, then all I can say is that he is not beyond the point in my mind where I can reconcile what he did as reasonable solutions to his insane problems. I do understand that hallucinations, delusions, and disassociation from reality are incredibly difficult to not only deal with, but to figure out a way of how to live some sort of semi-normal life amongst everyone else in this world. But despite this, the emotion that I feel when I think of the young girl who was brutally mowed down in front of her friends, the scream of her mother, and the tears of Michaela all prevent me from feeling any sort of sympathy towards Kody. I cannot even begin to fathom how Lauren's mother and father endured this unimaginable pain, and so here my attention turns to the father of Lauren. His name is Landavazo. I would like to end this video with words from this man, because I don't want him to be remembered as just another loved one, of just another victim in just another video. I feel as though this is the only way I can truly respect what he has endured. If I've made a video about his family's pain and suffering, then the least I can do is my best to ensure that Lauren's spirit is not lost amongst the rest of the fray that is this horrible puzzle. Her father deserves more than that. Every loved one of victims deserve more than that. I know it's not much in the face of what he has endured, but if any of you who have made it to this part of the story take something away from it, I would like it to be his words. I'd like for his message to be remembered long after the ugly face of the perpetrator fades into the obscurity of not only our minds, but life overall.
I had actually was just getting ready to retire from the Air Force. I had dropped my paperwork in 2001,
And then shortly after that, we found out that Bianca was pregnant. Or we were told in the delivery room not to take pictures because it blinds the doctors and stuff. So of course, as soon as I saw they had come out, I took pictures. But just how amazingly beautiful she was. Her eyes were open and just something about it. I mean, as soon as she came out, normally they put the baby on the mother's belly or something, and I might even have scooped her away from the doctor at first before that, just to go lay her on the table and look in her eyes and just realize that finally what that feeling I had, that feeling I had been looking forward to, that it had actually come true. And true love, I've never had pure love, a more unconditional love than I've had with my children. And no offense to my sons, but there's something different about a bond between a father and a daughter. It's something I looked forward to my whole adult life. And I remember her telling me that we thought kids had been hit by a car at the time, and so she was running that way, and I didn't really know what was going on or where she was going, so instead of following her, right away I jumped in my truck and drove because I didn't know where we were going. And as I was driving down there, and it's right around the corner, I remember at one point stopping the truck and pulling over, thinking, there's 1,000 kids at that school. It's not her, it can't be her. And so I stopped and I called her cell phone. Somebody answered the phone, and instantly what I heard was screaming. I didn't know at the time that it was Bianca screaming, but I heard somebody screaming her name, and the way she was screaming it, I knew. I instantly went cold, and I just knew. I got out of the truck, and I walked down to the corner, and as soon as I got to the corner, I could see the crime scene tape. And as I turned the corner, I almost feel like tunnel vision. Everything seems kind of like there was a white fog around everything except for Lauren. I saw Lauren lying there, and I could hear Bianca screaming in the background, but that was about all I could hear. And just looking at her and wondering, how come they're not doing anything? How come she's just laying there? She wasn't covered at that time. And I remember, I think I said it out loud, that how come you're not doing anything? Why is everybody not doing anything? So they let me into the ambulance, and as we were sitting there, and they were working on her, and I was looking back at them, and that was the first time I had noticed the blood. I didn't notice blood while she was lying there, but when I looked back, I could see her hair, and there was blood in her hair. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, that's not good, blood in her hair. But also what I heard was, we have a heartbeat. I heard one of the paramedics say that they had a heartbeat. And then I heard him say, now we need to start plugging holes. But I thought, oh my God, she's alive. She's alive. So I just remember talking to her on the way, telling her, please, baby, hold on. Hold on. Somebody came and took me to a room, said, we'll take you to Bianca. And when I got in there, Bianca was telling me we were in that room for a reason. And I told her, I said, no, baby, I heard him say she had a heartbeat. She's going to be all right. And when he did come in, when the man came in, Bianca instantly fell to her knees and started screaming. And I was trying to tell her, no, it's not that. They're just here to tell us what they're going to do to help her. And that's when they told us that she was gone. I I already knew the world was a mess. If you don't understand that or realize that, you're not paying attention. As human beings, we're failing our test. We treat each other horribly every single day. Horrible things happen. Just trying to make sense of all of it and be able to try to explain how Lauren was not like that. She didn't care about skin color. She didn't care about somebody's sexuality. She didn't care about their religious beliefs. None of those things mattered to her. What mattered was the person. We have an amazing legacy that Lauren left behind of kindness, helping other people. That's always been our beliefs as well, but we realize that had Lauren lived, or if Lauren were alive, she would spend her life trying to help others somehow, some way. We didn't know how, but we felt a responsibility to continue that legacy, to continue the things that we taught her, and to try to spread that as much as we can. Kody, look at me. As I sat here and listened to you talk, this first time I'd ever heard your voice. The only time I had ever seen your face before was in the mugshot, and then in the pretrial hearings that we would go to. When I saw you in that mugshot, when I saw you in court, you looked evil, you looked hateful, you looked twisted. Look at me, please. You looked twisted, you looked evil. I had no pity on you. All I could think about was what you took from us, who you took from us. After you went for some treatment while you were gone, while you were being medicated, and when you came back into court for the next hearing after that, when you walked in the room, immediately I was struck by the difference that I saw in you, that I saw in your face. And I watched you sit in court and listen to the seriousness of what you had done. It seemed to me that you had finally had a realization of what you had done. And to me, you looked like a scared, lost little boy who was grasping for hope. I couldn't help but be touched by that, but to feel pity for you, for what you had done, to be that twisted inside, that empty, that lack of anything good, that you could do something like that. Despite myself, I felt ashamed of myself. I felt ashamed of myself for feeling pity for you. I didn't even tell my wife, I didn't tell Bianca that I felt that way. I didn't find out till last night that Bianca also that day felt those same things. I was too ashamed and too embarrassed, please look at me, too ashamed and too embarrassed to tell me that we felt pity for you. The only thing that you said that was right was about how beautiful Lauren was, how she was an angel. She really was. The choices you made caused so many other people to suffer. We have no choice. The grief that you gave us, we'll live with that until we die, until we go home and see our daughter. We don't have a choice. Choices that you made, you're going to suffer the consequences now. What you're going to know, fear, pain, humiliation for what you've done. And the ironic thing about that, if Lauren had known you, had known the pain you had inside of you, if you had been able to reach out like a human being, that this is a good person I see, this is somebody, a light that I see, a goodness, if you'd have reached out to her and let her know how empty and hateful you felt inside, Lauren would have been the first one to try to help you. No matter what pain you feel, it will never equal the pain of losing a child so senselessly. And yes, it was senseless. I've heard you use the term, what it's like to be a real man. Okay? You don't understand the first thing about being a real man. I think you do now. First thing you're doing, you're looking me in the eye. That's what a real man does. Okay? Not just pulling up on little girls with a gun. But being able to look me in the eye after what you've done. Maybe you have a spark of it. But to see the manner with what you described. And again, I had never heard you talk until I saw your confession. I expected when I saw it that it might, I was hoping almost that it would be something, you were timid, you were hesitant, you were remorseful. You haven't shown any of that. And then to find out even after you were treated, even when you looked different to me, strikingly different, that you hadn't changed the way you think inside. Still smiling and laughing about what you did. There was nothing funny, nothing for you to be proud of that day. You stole our daughter from us physically, but you did not kill her spirit. I don't know if there is hope for you. And I do feel pity for that, but that's your choice. You brought that on yourself. We all have to live with your choice that day. I hope within your heart that you're able to reconcile what you've done. Quit feeling sorry for yourself. Start thinking about what you've done to others. Because whatever's in your heart, that's the only thing you're going to take with you when you leave.
The defendant is remanded to the custody of Sheriff of Tarrant County to be transferred to Wichita County later today and then to the institutional division so that his sentence may be carried out. This court's adjourned.